Happy Thursday, SMITE fans, and welcome into the final week of phase number 1 of the SMITE Challenger Circuit. We have got some great matches lined up for you today, starting with a fantastic one over in EU, but it has been a long competitive phase of SMITE here in the SEC, and it all comes down to one final weekend with a few matches remaining. Mifflin is with me to start off the day, and Miff, you look at the EU SEC, you figure at this point you'd have some parity in the standings, but it feels like all of the teams still competing for a few of those spots at Masters.
Yeah, the SEC in both regions, I think, has been as close as it's ever been. Maybe a common thread between the SEC and the SPL, because we've been hearing rumblings about that there as well. I mean, all of these players in both SECs and in the SPL have just been playing for so long. I think it makes sense that we're starting to see some parity. I mean, even in the first set of today, we've got like tons of SPL talent against tons of SPL talent.
Here are your EU matches for the week. All three of them will be broadcast today. Hex Mambo versus the Niflheim Wargs, Highland Ravens, Gilded Gladiators up next, followed up by the Styx Ferrymen and the Aru Scorpions to end the day. And Miff, a loaded slate of games for us here today. Starting off, and I like the way you kind of set up this one, because you look at Hex Mambo, Deathwalker, Johnny, Zeros, Trix Tank, E-Chrome, such a exciting roster to move forward and watch. And in the standings, so important between both of these two teams. Niflheim Wargs, of course, already qualified in. But with Hex Mambo at 2 wins, Gilded Gladiators at 2 wins, Styx Ferrymen close behind at 1 win, it's very simple. Hex Mambo can confirm spots and leave nothing up to the imagination with a win here. Niflheim Wargs playing just to secure that first seed spot. I believe even with tiebreakers and all that over the Highland Ravens, they'd be up top. So the Hex Mambo still with a little something to play for here, Mifflin. And this is a team, admittedly, I was surprised with the fact that they have struggled at all in the EU SEC. Of course, in such a competitive region, you imagine teams to drop games, drop sets, things like that. But Hex Mambo has not looked like you would expect this roster to look, especially given how it's made up of some of the belt slap team members from a couple years ago, an SPL team from just last year. There's Deathwalker, Johnny, Zeros, Trix Tank, and E-Chrome. So a little bit different from that Valkyrie squad, and a little bit different from that belt slap team. But still, Mifflin, a roster absolutely loaded with talent.
Yeah, talent and just great in-game leaders. I think when you talk about Hex Mambo, you have to revolve the conversation around, if you're not talking purely mechanics, probably Zeros and his ability to just dictate the pace of the game, not only in play on field, but also in shot calling. I've had the opportunity to hear his communications in the past, listen in a couple times, and this guy knows what he's talking about, and he talks incredibly well. And you can tell that every single team he's been on has got a similar methodology, a phenomenal in-game leader, now flanked by phenomenal mechanical talent. Johnny, we know what he's capable of. Even on the Valkyries last year, picks up a pentakill for himself on one of the losingest franchises in the SPL. That's pretty impressive in its own right. E-Chrome has been on a tear throughout the European SCC. Trix Tank is one of the most bombastic support players you'll have the opportunity to watch, because he just legitimately has zero regard for anything happening on the map. He just wants to do what he wants to do, and most of the time he wants to do the right thing. And then you've got now Deathwalker back into the league, and, well, that man does not need an introduction. Deathwalker simply owns.
And Deathwalker has one of the more eclectic god pools out of solo lane, so if you start to look forward to picks and bans for this set, you can never be too sure, especially with some of the mages, if it's going to be a mage mid, mage solo lane for this Hex Mambo team. Throwing teams for a loop is something that Hex Mambo like to do. Now, the Niflheim Wargs, also a very talented roster, but a roster I didn't expect to be 4-0 going in to the final week of the phase here in the EU SEC. Kana Sarpe, Angry Preds, and Spudio. Again, a roster that has had plenty of SEC experience and found plenty of success in the SEC over the years. But Miff taking down every team they've played up against, I think pretty surprising, but does speak to the talent of this team.
Yeah, and I misspoke at the top of the desk saying it was SPL talent against SPL talent. In the Niflheim Wargs, you've more so got SMITE Console League talent, arguably more impressive. Maybe that's my bias rearing its head, but you've got Kana out there, you've got Preds. These guys have been dominating in that league. And then you've got the SEC lifers, if you would, in Sarpe, Spudio, Angry, who have been dominating and have very recently come into their own. I echo your sentiment that I was not expecting the Niflheim Wargs to go undefeated so far, especially considering how stiff the competition is over in Europe, but they have been very diverse in their win conditions. They have been rotating and controlling the early game. They're one of the more early game slanted European teams. Yeah. And they generally, if they don't get the ball rolling early, which is seldom, they generally do. But when they don't, they're able to slow down the game, play around those objectives, group up as 5, and then address the match through team fights. So that diversity is really what makes this team so hard to play against.
Now, Angry has looked phenomenal, and I think so far for the Niflheim Wargs, Angry stands out to me as potential MVP for this squad. I'm looking at a handful of the games that this team has played, and in the first 6 or 7 or so sets that this team played this year, Angry died like twice, like 0 deaths for most of the games that Angry will play. The positioning of this player so strong, the damage output of the mid laner is so high for this Niflheim Wargs team. And I think the mid lane matchup between Zeros and Angry could be the matchup to watch here as we go into picks and bans for game number 1 between Hex Mambo and the Niflheim Wargs. Still a lot on the line between these two teams. And as we move forward, Miff, I do want to reiterate my point about Deathwalker, and I don't know if that'll come to fruition early on here in picks and bans for game 1, but you have to imagine that Deathwalker is going to play something not standard, right?
Something different.
Something different, right? I mean, we have seen some Cthulhu games, but also Mulan, Cucullin, technically a warrior, but not a meta warrior. Throw a random Hades in there, and you've got his last 6 games. I think that's something the Wargs have to be wary of.
Yeah, I think you're right to bring that up as well. Deathwalker, it feels like to me, and I think it's something I called out last time we had the opportunity to watch him play, is that he decided in Season 7 what he likes to play, and he has not taken in any new information since then. He said, all right, well, Cucullin was bomb back then, so I'll lock him in now, and it's generally worked out for him. So that was one of the concerns I had for Hex Mambo coming into this week, is whether or not they had adjusted their god pools to adapt towards this newer meta. Kleena getting locked into the first slot slightly alleviates those concerns for me, has some flex potential into both jungle and solo, but because we have not seen Deathwalker take it into solo just yet, I'm not sure if I'm willing personally to say it's a flex.
Right, it would be a standard solo lane pick, which is why I'm not ready to throw it in Deathwalker's hands maybe just yet. Daji has seen high levels of pick ban priority, not only here in the SEC, but in the SPL. It feels like Daji closing in on 80, 90% pick ban rate, if not already there, if not even a little bit above that as well. And so Daji and Thothmith, talk about a 1-2 punch for the Niflheim Wargs to start off their draft with. You get maybe one of the most high priority junglers with one of the most high priority mid laners. You've got a lot of range and a lot of setup already.
Yeah, but generally when you pick Thoth this early, it makes it a lot easier for the enemy team to figure out how they're going to address that pick, where they're going to pick up their dive, how they're going to get into that back line. So I feel like nowadays when we do see Thoth get locked in, it's a little bit later on in the draft, maybe absorb a couple more bans beforehand, but the Wargs get themselves a very strong top 3 nonetheless. Daji, Thoth, and Yamoja. You've got great peel potential from the Yamoja, phenomenal ability to just keep this Thoth alive in some of these team fights, separate the engagement, and deal with that dive potential of Hex Mambo, which is not quite there just yet. Chernobog sure can jump into a shadow. Kleena will walk through walls, so even Yamoja going to be mitigated in her efficacy of peeling her out. But Tiamat can get into that quadrupedal stance, get into that back line, make it a little bit more difficult for the Thoth. You've got CC immunity in both Chernobog and Tiamat to deal with the Palau from Daji. So small answers here and there. Maybe, though, an interesting selection for the Wargs. Shiva locked in. Gotta think that's solo.
Did we ever figure out the difference between efficacy and effectiveness?
Yeah, efficacy is when you are trying to figure out like what is going to happen, and effectiveness is when you are looking back.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. That's from an English major. Kabam told me, so I trust him.
In which one did you just use?
Efficacy.
And that was the right one?
That's looking forward.
All right, I'll take your word for it, Nif. Niflheim Wargs finalized their bans with a Hades ban, sensing that Deathwalker still needed a pick. And yeah, Deathwalker did still need a pick. But what a unique draft here, Miff, because Kumbhakarna, likely, honestly, if I didn't already see the Kleena locked in and then the Kali locked in.
You're probably saying it's going to solo.
I'm assuming Kumba's going to solo, but looks like could be Kleena solo lane. Maybe there's a weird world where you take Johnny off the Kali. I don't think so. We'll get answers to all of this and more in game number 1 between the Niflheim Wargs and Hex Mambo. The hyper carry late game jungler for Johnny is something that we saw plenty in the SPL and then the SCC the year prior. and we'll get one more look at it here. In the solo lane myth now, if you look at Akali and Aklidna up against Shiva and Daji, it feels like 4 junglers that are all going to battle with one another on the right.
There are. So I'm curious to watch that 2v2. I think that I would probably give favor over towards the team that has Shiva just because of how strong his level 2 is, whereas Johnny going to need a little bit more time to hit the ground running. Deathwalker, decent clear, decent fight potential at level 2, but not really the best clear potential. So I would argue the Niflheim Wargs is going to benefit greatly from both of these teams electing for this start. I am concerned, though, for the Niflheim Wargs' ability to slow down or control the early game. Because when you look at Hex Mambo's composition, that is a late-game dominant team. Kleena and Kali, phenomenal scalers. Chernobog and Tiamat in that exact same regard, phenomenal scalers. Trixtank playing Kumakarna, I mean, he's going to put people to sleep. As long as he doesn't buy Mystical Mail, you don't really do anything wrong there. Whereas the Niflheim Wargs, I think they just get outscaled come late game.
Trixtank wants to get active immediately, blinks forward, and takes a whole heap of damage as Hex Mambo's dual lane gets pushed back just a little bit. I haven't seen Kumba in a while, Myth. It has been an absolute minute since we have seen this pick. Strong at setup, I suppose, here for Trixtank, and maybe you can get aggressive in the way that he hopes, but when you're going up against a Yamoja and an Uller, you're going to be eating a lot of pressure there in that lane.
Whoa.
Johnny into mid lane, has mannequins early on. You want to make use of it, and Johnny already has, making things a bit uncomfortable for Sarpei.
Yeah, those problem pieces that I was concerned about where the Wargs should have dominated, the Shiva pick, the Daji pick this early on against Kali and Kleena, both have been getting pressured out. Johnny putting a ton of damage into Sarpei, and Wilkana hard stuck inside of his tower because Deathwalker is just styling on him right now. Hex Mambo doing a great job of just making sure the early game doesn't get out of control and even taking control of it themselves.
Teleport used by Kana, and so that's an early win for Deathwalker, who has beads.
Very early.
Able to mitigate out the teleport presence. Kana will go back, snag up a health potion, the chalice, and head right back to lane. So completely mitigating the early teleport, and that's going to be a nice benefit for Deathwalker, kind of equalizing that lane out a little bit further. Whenever there's a Daji on one side, you always have to look towards beads, inherent CC immunity, things like that. Gonna have 4 sets of beads for Sarpei to work through early on in this game. And I suppose you're also hoping that, Pred, Spudio, maybe even Angry, are also able to lock down a few sets of beads and make life easier for Sarpei.
Yeah, but my concern is that how consistently is Angry going to be locking down those beads? It's just evade and punish that's really forcing out that relic, and if you're using that aggressively, you're probably already winning the team fight, so that's essentially a moot point. Kana might be able to do it, but his knockups come out very quickly. It's not very often you'll see people pre-beadsing Shiva's abilities. So I think it really does come down to, is Preds on point with his stuns? If yes, then that's phenomenal. Is Spudio landing his single target stuns? Generally going to be the answer is yes, but single target nonetheless means that you're going to have to work through multiple people before Sarpei is allowed to get aggressive.
Uh-oh, Kana jumped on, stunned, and silence. Ult 1 out from Deathwalker. Kana with a double dash away,
Surely
just
not.
a little bit more damage, walks back into it. And that's first blood to Hex Mambo and Deathwalker in the solo lane.
Early aggression there. Hex Mambo playing around that early 5 from Deathwalker. And now Kana, who had already used his teleport to get in the lane just, 20 seconds ago, now will have to walk back. At least is able to finish up Soul Eater on this back, I believe. So, small wins over to the Niflheim Wargs. Actually, excuse me, that's actually a Soul Eater picked up for Deathwalker.
Yep.
Massive wins for Hex Mambo.
Yeah, big win. Zeros chunk down. Chains will have the damage. And chains are there from the Palau. Sarpei rotates on into mid, and the Niflheim Wargs able to strike back. Zeros takes an early death here in this game. I suppose that's an important note, Myth, is that as a stun from Johnny slows down further aggression.
Good shot.
Root and damage, yes.
Whew.
Nearly gets taken down. Had destruction, but doesn't pull the trigger, and the patience pays off for Johnny.
Yeah, Angry does not full charge that ultimate, just trust that he's got enough damage on base and did not quite have enough. Had he hit every single hieroglyphic assault, maybe Johnny falls down though, or is at least forced to use that ultimate for the death immunity, but not the case this time around. Kills now equalized at the 4.5 minute mark, but looking at the builds, a slight shift up from the standard from Johnny goes Mannequin Scepter immediately into the Golden Blade. That's going to help out your clear a lot. You're going to be clearing the jungle much more efficiently, but you are sacrificing early pressure. That said, with some of the nerfs to Crusher and things of the like, maybe Golden Blade has jumped up a little bit in that priority order. It's 35 power, decent attack speed. You're speeding up your clear anyway, and late game's what you got your eyes on.
Yeah.
If you are a Kali, I might be a fan of this build.
Yeah, if you're worried about speeding things up or getting some more farm, Golden Blade will help you get there. Deathwalker, as you've already mentioned with the Soul Eater, it's a decent power spike here. Z-Chrome ults on into left, and an epic uppercut from Trixtank puts Preds in an awkward spot. Shell buys some time. One last auto attack, but E-Chrome doesn't have it. And Preds will walk away and survive. Requires an ultimate and a shell. But, as Trixtank just trying to delay some backs, Preds will survive nonetheless. And a good use of a power spike there for Hex Mambo.
And great decision-making from Spudio to decide to get in front of those auto attacks from E-Chrome. Very often, ADCs are a little bit selfish, and not the case this time around for Spudio, who decides, hey, maybe I value Preds' life just a little bit more than 200 of my own HP. Make sure that his support gets out of there alive, and Hex Mambo comes up empty-handed after a heavy commitment. Costs E-Chrome his ultimate as well as Trixtank's. Does at least hold on to both of those relics on the side of Hex Mambo, where Shell is lost by Preds as well as his ultimate. And, well, Yamoja at this portion of the game does not have a whole lot of ultimates to play with. That is a very long cooldown.
The difference in builds, I will hold that thought. Deathwalker will use the beads, and Powwow will strip away one set of beads over on the right side of the map. And so now return potential for Preds, or for Sarpei rather, later on in this lane now as Deathwalker doesn't have the set of beads. Build differential, of course, as you'd expect over here on the left side of the map, Miff, with what looks like will be Transcendence ability-based full-on burst damage from Spudio. Or E-Chrome sticking with a little bit more of what's standard. Axe flies out, stuns, but doesn't deal that much damage. Looks like enough to defend the purple buff for the time being, though. Neither of the junglers rotating over here towards left. And Hex Mambo uninterested in continuing their pressure.
Yeah, Hex Mambo, though, is nursing a pretty large gold lead already, especially considering how slow the pace of this game is, where First Bloods land, the fact that we are 1-to-1 in the slash lines. 2,000 gold, nothing to scoff at this portion of the game. Maybe we could see Hex Mambo start to rotate and try and leverage that lead towards some objectives. I doubt we see an early gold period. Their composition not exactly suited for that, at least until we see a little bit more of Johnny's build. If that's a stone-cutting sword in the next slot, all of a sudden this Kali is already doing a whole lot of a damage to objectives. But if it's something like, I don't know, the Serrated Edge for 20% penetration, some decent lifesteal, that could slow down that potential. But Pyromancer, certainly an option, because you're one of the best objective-based gods in the game. Kleena is hovering on that side of the map, and Deathwalker has got very strong pressure already. Fully upgraded the Soul Eater, a full level lead over Kana. So if you can start moving objectives and fights to that side of the map, Hex Mambo will benefit greatly.
Yeah, Miff, admittedly, the 2,000 gold lead surprised me. It's not something you would notice until you look up towards the top of the screen. Soul Lane feels very strong for Deathwalker at this point. I think the small moment of forcing out that teleport early and getting a kill with the help of Johnny was very impactful. Yeah, about 600 gold or so over Kana. And the XP per minute, a pretty hefty margin for Deathwalker over Kana as well. Levels are equal, but consider Deathwalker a bit ahead in the XP department as well, by about 60 or so XP per minute. And so you look at this 2,000 gold lead, and you know, call it a third of it or so sits over in the solo lane. Could shorten that margin, though. Sarpei has eyes for Zeros yet again, but Zeros has beads yet again. Trixtank still over here in mid. Sarpei blinks backwards. Johnny could follow up on the epic uppercut here. Riptide delays out Johnny, and Sarpei will make it back to the tier 1 tower, but a root from Preds as E-Chrome is ulted into the mid lane. Keeps things going. Both solo laners now making their way over from the right side of the map. The River's Rebuke is up, and it separates out Trixtank. The double mez, but he'll go into his passive here eventually, but there's not enough damage, and Johnny can re-engage. Kana's heals enough to keep the Wargs alive, and somehow, some way, no one dies.
Yeah, Deathwalker hovers the edge of that fight, but does not find the opportunity to engage himself. Had to be able to close that gap. Gotta think he should have been able to finish off some of those kills. The decent range damage from cleanup, Flickering Visions, the ultimate. It would only taken one of the two to finish off Kana or Sarpe in that regard. But instead, Hex Mambo will take the TKO win in mid. That said, small difference. E-Chrome does rotate to that team fight, and Spudio does not. Spudio was already suffering slightly in the lane. I would argue about a half level down on E-Chrome, but in just being able to clear out some of those waves, push him into the tower, takes out a good deal of that tower's HP, but more importantly, equalizes the experience and gets a couple of stacks on that Transcendence.
But Miff, I do think a worrying trend for the Wargs is something that we were concerned about moving forward in the beads department, where now a couple of times Sarpe has walked in, found the proper chains, and the beads or other inherent CC immunity in the kits have just been used, and there's not been capitalization on it at any further point in the game so far. And so I think we're already starting to see how some of those interactions can go, where it feels like Sarpe is burning the beads or getting the CC immunity out of the kits. And then there's nothing else from the Wargs after the fact. So I think looking forward to fights in the future, that could change how the ebbs and flows of some of the team fights end up looking. Does it end up being Stone Cutting Sword Myth for Johnny in the second item slot there? Golden Blade into Hasten Katana. And so there's going to be a lot of chase down from this Kali. Really looking to stick to the target, stick to the backline, and stay active.
Yeah, I was expecting a Hasten Katana pickup at some point in this build, but this early on, you are missing out on a lot of power going Golden Blade straight into Hasten. That is, what, 60 total power altogether, which is pretty slow compared to what we used to see from like Crusher in the first slot, which is already equivalent power exchange.
Angry has used the beads. Johnny blinks forward, has the stun, and will be able to whittle down that health bar. Johnny gets the heal as well. Hex Mambo looking to chase down Preds on the other side of the wall. Goes to Yamoja. Could be another for the Kali, but a good Riptide will give it over to Zeros. Hex Mambo collapse, and they're able to get 2 kills onto the Wargs.
Yeah, so it seems like that power not needed for Johnny right now. He is doing just enough damage to put threat onto literally everybody on the Niflheim Wargs, and it's Hex Mambo who strike first deep in the enemy jungle. But the fight may have erupted around the red buff, and the red buff may have been dropped, but it was never about that. Instead, it was about the Gold Fury, and Hex Mambo take that one easily. Nobody in range to put up any defense. Spudio, though, may have stepped too far forward. He doesn't know.
Yeah, Spudio unsure that Johnny is behind. Beads are gone. Johnny has destruction here.
Ooh.
And actually chooses to turn and jump away. Spudio just does just enough to stay alive. Had Aegis as well, so that might have been drawn out just a little bit further. Johnny has just been a nuisance. Deathwalker now jumped on by Sarpe. Horrific emblem used by Deathwalker. Chains are beadsed out. And yet again, Deathwalker will walk away.
Yeah, I want to break down that exchange we saw between Johnny and Spudio. Spudio holds onto his leap for the entirety of that chase, realizing the second he dedicates leap, it's going to allow Johnny to do the exact same, and the damage of it may have been enough to kill, but it's more important that there's that threat of, hey, if you start destruction, I can get over a wall. If you are on my heels, I can escape over the wall, maybe drop Aegis and buy some time for my team. Had Spudio used that leap at any point, that's a guaranteed kill over to Johnny. I thought we would see, though, Johnny just channel destruction for the AoE damage around him to force out that leap. Instead, more concerned about his own death immunity, holds onto it for relative safety going forward. So a very smart, short exchange between these two players.
The jungle back and forth has been fun to watch here so far. Johnny getting the better of it for the time being. Spudio leaps away. Epic uppercut connects onto the Uller. There's a stun from Johnny on the other end. Aegis worth its weight in gold as Spudio jumps away just fine. But Johnny's still considering a chase. Plenty speedy on this Kali. As Trixtank Myth has not shied away from finding initiations with the epic uppercut, even just for individual setup as far as non-team fights. But now it's just going to be a blink in and a double stun. Trixtank on a Mez, and Preds with no Omi will throw up the River's Rebuke, then be jumped on by Johnny on the other side. Trixtank, the one tanking up the tower. Shell delays things out further. And yet again, Johnny will have to watch a target get
Preds.
away with low HP,
Preds.
but could get the heal. Preds sticks around. Now Johnny caught in the pal out. Destruction gets used. And Johnny will look to chase down Sarpé. Eventually there will be a kill here, and it's Sarpé who trades back.
Preds just got the horse blinders on there, realizes Sarpé is rotating in. It is a guaranteed kill. Preds does not need to be there, but trades out his life and makes sure that Johnny gets a little bit more value for his time. Now 2-1-3, the jungler of Hex Mambo, and this Kali is clearly out of control. Level parity between the junglers, though. I'd argue we've seen a lot more from the Kali regardless. Sarpé at least able to maintain that same level.
Deathwalker has horrific emblem, but I'm not sure you use it here. No, Sarpé also on a killing spree. Both junglers bringing immense threat to the map right now, and the Wargs will be able to rotate over to the Pyromancer, close up that gold gap just a little bit further. Was hovering just beneath 5K a second ago. Drops back down to just beneath 4K, so a nice little swing there for the Wargs myth. Doesn't totally change the face of this game, but does close up a couple thousand gold.
It does, and they desperately needed that. Even in desyncing the neutral objectives, so smart. Now Hex Mambo can't just walk over and pick it up for themselves. Now the Niflheim Wargs will have the opportunity to defend the Gold Fury if they so choose. Generally, though, when you are behind, having them synced up, the neutral objective that is a little bit more useful because you can always take that consolation prize. But at the current deficit, 3,000 or so gold, you don't want to be allowing this small bleed out to continue. Had Hex Mambo just gone for Oni Fury on respawn and the Niflheim Wargs traded Pyro, it would still slowly bleed in favor of the Order side team. So I think proper for the Niflheim Wargs not only to find that pick on the Deathwalker with extreme ease, but also taking the objective and making sure Hex Mambo will have to wait a little while before they can group up on another.
Wow, there's a little threat as Spudio has to use the beat. Sarpé is over on left instead of Preds. Preds is the one roaming around a bit. Trixtank will head back to base. Deathwalker knows the blue buff is gone. Looks like we might take a deep breath for just a moment. And I think such a unique state in the game now, Myth, where Sarpé has gone, of course, totally one style of build. Brawlers, beat stick, hi-rez, crusher. And then full auto attack for Johnny now with the chin size completed. You look at like this state in the game, you have to imagine jungle 1v1s are going to be prevalent. Do you end up feeling more confident towards Sarpé or Johnny at this point in the game and winning those 1v1s? Because that really could be very impactful later on as this game moves on and gets to late game, junglers mirroring one another, and the ebbs and flows of team fights could rely on jungles.
Yeah, it is nearly impossible for Adaji to kill a Kali in a 1v1. It is just about impossible. The DPS trade always going to favor Johnny, and only one of them's got death immunity.
Trixtank out of the Riptide. Oni Fury is up. Johnny in a difficult spot here. Jumps out of the axe, blinks out of the stun. Ultimate channeled from E-Chrome. That doesn't mean Johnny is not going to reinitiate onto this fight. Johnny back behind the Oni Fury pit. The rest of Hex Mambo over onto the right. Big silence out. Oni Fury taken low, and Hex Mambo confirm the objective as the Niflheim Wargs end up backing away. Deep in the back line is Johnny, searching desperately for a heal, but he won't get it. Kana turns around the damage, and Johnny is overextended. Hex Mambo find the objective, but the Niflheim Wargs snag a kill, put Johnny down to 2-2.
But look how much it costs the Niflheim Wargs to get that kill. They lose the objective, they lose the majority of their relics, no beads available, and Trixtank still a menace in the back line.
Oh goodness, Zeros has got damage, doesn't he? Yes, he does, and now it's more than worthwhile for Hex Mambo and could get worse. Deathwalker will add another kill, and the wheels are spinning for this Hex Mambo team. And this is the style of game that we have seen Hex Mambo play at times. But early on in the phase here in the SEC, we were wondering why we didn't see this more often, because this is such a talented team who is capable of playing this way and min-maxing their initiation moments. And that is a big swing here in this game to get Hex Mambo right back into control. Another couple thousand gold swings back to the Order side.
And how does Hex Mambo steal that Gold Fury? You gotta highlight Trixtank's individual play. Walks up, finds the three-man mez, turns attention towards Angry, who is channeling the ultimate. Nothing on the side of Hex Mambo is beating that ultimate for confirmation. So what does Trixtank do? he just sends him to the moon. He says, all right, get up there and stay there. Then the Hex Mambo, with that time, with the 3-man mez, with the epic uppercut on Angry, steal away the objective and nearly find a perfect re-engage. Had Johnny been allowed to reset his HP with that bounty, with that kill, would have been a clean team fight for Hex Mambo. Luckily, the Niflheim Wargs, still a very strong team, even in these insane circumstances, are able to find those winning lines, walk themselves out of there, and find the return kill, but maybe lose sight of the goal just a moment afterward as they get caught out on their own red buff, and Hex Mambo push their lead even further. 19 minutes in, 6,000 some odd gold. This is a steep hill for the Wargs.
Luckily for the Wargs, the experience hasn't gotten completely out of control. 2 levels in mid and ADC never feels great. 2 levels in support as well. But you're also equal in solo and in jungle. We've seen far, far worse discrepancies in experience around this point in the game. But that is a silver lining. When my comment is, at least you're not that far behind in XP when the gold is pretty steep.
And one of the even people are both level 20.
Right.
That's, I suppose, something.
It is something, Myth. There's not a solo lane XP difference.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. Can't be at all. Or jungle at the moment. But Hex Mambo are just so effective now at pushing their pressure. And you have to look towards the right side of the map. Pyromancer's up. Pyromancer hasn't really even been considered at this point in the game, or up to this point in this game. Fire Giant will have to be looked at here shortly. And you just have to imagine, Myth, that Hex Mambo are favoring themselves in a 5v5. They've hit some big power spikes. A full Soul Reaver for Zeros over Angry, who has just the tier 1 book. I think Hex Mambo are going to be in a strong spot to maybe force something here.
They can force a fight, but they won't leave it up to a coin toss. Again, even though Angry is behind nearly an entire item and an entire level, he still has the hardest hitting ability on the map, and it's not necessarily close. He's also able to do it from a very significant range. So I think if we do see Hex Mambo engage, it'll either be in a team fight in neutral, like we're seeing now.
Yeah, that's a big blink, a big initiation, and big relic burn from Trixtank. Somehow, Sarpei lives all of it. Sarpei has to use everything, but Hex Mambo throw out a couple ults. Kana goes back in. Johnny is taken low here. Both junglers under pressure early on in this fight. Kana will end up triggering the ultimate as well. Now, this is not the first time we've seen this in this game, where both teams are brawling it out in a 5v5 and somehow no kills drop. That is the case yet again. Hex Mambo had eyes towards the jungler. Adaji relatively slippery. Niflheim Wargs now have to reply because the Pyromancer is pulled out by Hex Mambo. Angry does have Final Judgment. I'm not sure you want to send that one towards the Pyro, and so Hex Mambo should get the objective.
Yeah, so we might see Hex Mambo engage in neutral territory, or what we were about to see is try and force a fight around the neutral objective and then peel off to take the engagement in the jungle. I don't think we will see them fight inside the Fire Giant pit. I don't think we'll see them fight on top of the Pyromancer. Fights might start there, but they will certainly not end there. Hex Mambo, not a team that are willing to coin toss generally, especially when it's weighted so heavily in favor of the Niflheim Wargs. So keep your eyes on the Wargs and their positioning. They're going to have a pretty difficult to answer question coming up very shortly. Primal Fury spawning and just now, Fire Giant up immediately. Will the Wargs try and split the map and divert the attention to Hex Mambo, or will they group up and take the 5-on-5 engagement? As of now, 5 stacked on the gold.
Wow, the Wargs are sending everyone to the left side of the map. They can confirm this objective, and they do, but look at Trixtank again. Deep into the team of the Niflheim Wargs, and the rest of the Wargs disengaging. Palau, well played by Sarpei, pulls the only threat back in Trixtank. And so it's a clean, relatively clean objective secure for the Niflheim Wargs, but Kana ult's down, Sarpei's ult is down, so's River's Rebuke and Final Judgment, Myth. It should be clean when you're spending 4 ultimates to confirm the Fury.
Yeah, no beads left available to the Wargs. Majority of ultimates down. That's a fast Fire Giant as well. Hex Mambo, pick it up.
That is a simple call for Hex Mambo. All of the team fighting utility of the Wargs is down. And the only ultimate that you see filled out there is Spudio, and that's going to be filled out the majority of the game. And Hex Mambo do the exact same thing, Myth, but for the more priority objective. They burn a lot of ultimates, burn a lot of damage, and Hex Mambo now pull far, far away ahead. The gold remains relatively the same, of course a little bit more valuable. But it's the next couple of minutes with 3 Tier 2 towers left, and all the Phoenixes then being exposed where Hex Mambo can seal this game. And that's a risky call, Miff. If you're willing to spend that much for the Primal Fury, you've got to be prepared that the enemy team is just going to rotate to fire.
Yeah, I don't think they were willing to spend that much. I think what the Wargs had seen there is, okay, we've already dedicated this much time to the Gold Fury. We were already 5 stacked. We have to get it now. They weren't expecting Hex Mambo to group up as quickly as they did, and they say, well, we can't give it over for free, and if we reset it, we're doing exactly that. We're giving it over for free. We can't coin toss it because our coin toss is heavily weighted, so we need to take it for ourselves, and in doing so, they dedicate, 4 ultimates over to the objective. The majority of their relics were forced on the defensive run. So it's Hex Mambo who see this opportunity and sees it immediately. Great play over to the veteran SPL team, but small wins over to the Wargs. Immediately after the Fire Giant, Hex Mambo forced to retreat. So what can the Wargs do? It's not a lot. It's a small win. It's minuscule. It's hard to bring up. They got a Tier 1 tower.
Hey, that's not nothing.
That's something.
That is more than 0, right? I mean, we've talked about the level lead in solo lane not being anything because they're both level 20. A Tier 1 tower is not nothing. You get a little gold if you're the Niflheim Wargs.
A little.
A crumb of gold at 24 minutes in. It'll be the Tier 2 towers, though, that are traded back by Hex Mambo, and what was a small win now feels minuscule for the Wargs as you're looking at 5 members of Hex Mambo walking down the left side of the map to an exposed Phoenix. And this is where that jungle matchup could come to fruition, Miff. Maybe Johnny wants to fight around the rest of the team. You're going to have to send somebody to mid if Johnny ends up splitting off in a 4-1 split. And who's going to mirror him in Sarpé, but you're not expressing much confidence in the 1v1 for the Daji.
Yeah, I might have even sent like Spudio. You can't be angry. Angry is like the biggest part of your team fight. It might have to be Spudio just because he can clear waves from outside or from inside the Phoenix. Doesn't need to line up against Johnny, whereas Sarpé, he's going to have to.
And not totally simple for Johnny. You can't just walk in and ignore Sarpé because there is still plenty of damage from the Daji, and you got to be careful taking a fight under the Phoenix. So not just as simple as a 1v1 for Johnny, but in a 1v1 outside of the base, that's something you would assume Johnny would have a pretty big advantage going into. So there's only 1 Tier 2 tower left.
He's not going to speed, is he? No way, right?
Who?
Johnny. My man has evacuated the team fight.
Yeah, well,
Hex
everyone
Mambo,
has. They have. There's no siege.
There was like, they took 2 Tier 2 towers, right? That's a decent gold infusion. You got the obelisk for yourselves, but so much time left on this Fire Giant power play. You've already stripped the jungle. Just very surprised to see Hex Mambo let off the gas there. I mean, relics all available except for 1 set of beads on E-Chrome, but he still has CC immunity, the ultimate. Niflheim Wargs, I suppose similarly strong, but playing at a massive deficit, 10,000 gold. Just surprised to see that.
I agree.
Just complete release of tension. Hex Mambo say, look, we got a little bit of gold in pocket. Makes not for a lead. Let's go ahead and spend that up. And they pick up some Tier 1 items. Maybe they upgrade some relics. Johnny didn't have speed buff. You need that. You're a jungler. You
gotta have it, right?
Gotta have that. Like Cold Stone Creamery. Gotta have it.
Is that their slogan?
That's like the biggest size of cup. That's the
it's
gotta
called
have
the
it.
gotta have it.
It's called the gotta have it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose there's enough time left on the Fire Giant buff, Nif, that you have time to make that type of play. Let's go back, spend up some of the gold. One more chance at a push here. You're right, it did feel like tension was kind of mounting and then released all at once, but Hex Mambo, again, still have the Fire Giant buff. Still able to make a play happen here. Gotta be obnoxious playing against Deathwalker on this Kleedna, who can just do that, send out some of the ult charge. Right side Phoenix, the one being sieged up. Pred stunned and melted through by Hex Mambo. Shell gets used, so does Horrific Emblem. Both relics down from Preds and a small win to Hex Mambo.
Yeah, Preds gets 0 value from either of those relics. The Shell, I mean, I suppose was a dissuasion tool and seems to have worked yet again. That's like when you see a bear in the wild, you just got to get big, or is that a lion? I don't know.
No, bears, you get big, depending on the bear.
Okay, so don't take this survival advice if you're listening, but you see a bear, you get big. I think that's what the Niflheim Wargs did right there. Preds walks up, got big, nearly dies for it, and the Hex Mambo say, all right, well, that guy's large.
I think if it's a black bear, you get big and you try to fight. If it's a brown bear, which is like a grizzly,
you run.
No.
Don't run.
No, you lie down and you hope.
What?
Yes.
That can't be
Yes, if you run, a grizzly will chase you down. And did you see Revenant?
No.
One
That's the
Leo
one-
is Oscar.
That's
He
wolves.
gets mauled by a bear, and then if it's a like a polar bear, if it's a white bear, then you're done for.
Who discovered that survival technique, do you think? He's like, they see a grizzly and they're like, so I'm just gonna they just gave up. Like,
Yeah.
the first guy just gave up
Yeah,
and they were like, oh, that works.
That worked, right? Yeah, and that's exactly what it felt like. Hex Mambo did to the Niflheim Wargs.
No, the other way.
Phoenix defense. No, the Phoenix defense was just there. It was a grizzly bear standing in the base, and Hex Mambo said, "All right."
No, Hex Mambo is the threat. They're the ones with all the leads, so they're the grizzly bear.
No, I think the Phoenix defense is the threat.
Fire Giant pulled out by Hex Mambo. Me and Dave will have our
I'm
disagreement later.
saying we didn't see an attempt at a Phoenix siege.
Agreed, because Niflheim Wargs laid down and let it happen.
They let Hex Mambo leave?
Yeah.
Fair enough, Niff. We will surely see a Phoenix siege at some point here in this Fire Giant, as all three birds are open. And the Wargs will not be able to just lay down as the impending
Good
threat
God.
of Hex Mambo is here. We might not even see a defense as Kana
Okay.
nearly survives, but Deathwalker confirms the damage from range. And over to the mid lane go a few members of Hex Mambo. And a 5 versus 4, just waiting on the minions to get here before we siege in.
Yeah, Johnny has got the pressure, but does not want to line up in the 1v1. Instead, will join his
There you go.
team in a 5 versus 3.
Trix Tank dashes forward, finds the Mez, spreads in the River's
Just
Refuge.
lay down.
Yeah,
Oh.
Echrome has got lots of damage. That's a polar bear. You can't run away from that. On the left side, Phoenix under the eye of Hex Mambo. And then now 5 versus 3 for 24 seconds, and then you'll be in a 5 versus 4 for about 20 seconds. Making sure to check all the boxes, Miff, as the mid lane Phoenix now gets looked at.
Yeah, gonna clear out that minion wave first, make sure they're in there. Sarpe, Angry, and Spudio have got a hard task, especially with Johnny on the flank.
Johnny could go around the back here, follow up on the epic uppercut. Spudio able to jump away. Palau is good, pulls in Zeros, who's a bit late on the beats, but the Aegis was there as well. To respawn out of Kana, and still in a 5 versus 4, though low on health, Hex Mambo choose to go no further.
Yeah, Hex Mambo, again, just biding their time, taking every single small win that they can before the Niflheim Wargs are able to recenter themselves. I think had maybe Zero's been a little bit quicker on either Beads or Aegis, that probably goes a lot better for Hex Mambo. He uses both relics, loses out on 80% of his HP and gets pulled in, so I'd argue zero value from either one of his relics in that small exchange. But when you've got a lead like this, you're allowed to make mistakes like that, and Hex Mambo have got a massive lead. It has been years, actual years, since I've seen 20,000 gold separate two squads.
Legitimately?
I feel like it. When's the last time you saw 20K?
Of anything.
It might have been a Zeros game.
Of anything,
The
it might have been.
Valks.
Well, I mean, really consider the way we got here is Hex Mambo getting every ounce of gold off of the map with all of their Fire Giants.
Every time.
I'll use the word reckless because it's not always a good thing and it's not always a bad thing. A more reckless team may have forced fights earlier on, but Hex Mambo far from a reckless team. Niflheim Wargs realize that they're going to come back in this game with
they know.
gold as impactful as it is. They've got to make a play happen as everyone from the Wargs groups up on the Hex Mambo red buff. Fire Giant will respawn here in a little bit of time. There's still time on this FG buff. Maybe for one more Phoenix siege here from Hex Mambo. Johnny blinks forward.
I think it wins
Stun
this.
on Nakana. Yeah, I think so too. I think Chinsai, Silver Branch, Odibo, Hastened, Golden Blade. I think that wins you that fight easily. And Hex Mambo in a 5 versus 4. Still with Fire Giant buff and 2 Fire Minion waves. Now might consider trying to end the game.
5 versus 4, 0 commitment from Johnny outside of the blink. Still holds on to beads and death immunity. The ultimate, everybody else similarly pretty strong. Echrome, the only one without his ultimate. It's good damage on a Sarpe. This could be it.
And that is a bruiser build on Deathwalker that has melted Sarpe's health bar. Right side Phoenix low and right side Phoenix gone. Hex Mambo hovering back and forth between ending the game
It's like Jaws.
and stalling for another FG, but now the call is in. You have to imagine Hex Mambo has the damage. They
fast.
sure do. And with a over 20,000 gold lead in 32 minutes, Hex Mambo take game 1.
But that, although perfectly convincing, completely clinical, there was not a moment in that game where I did not think Hex Mambo was going to win.
Yeah.
considering the pacing of it and the lead, how quickly they were able to establish it, the fact that game goes to 35 minutes, I think could be concerning for Hex Mambo and their fans, just because every single minute you give over to your opposition is 1 minute where you might make a mistake, where they could find one way back in. There is an argument to be made of, okay, we played it clinical. We made sure that every single T was crossed and every single I had a little heart on top of it.
Yep.
But maybe you got to be willing to go for slightly riskier plays just to remove opportunities from your opposition. Do it against the SPL.
Right.
Do that against the Oni Warriors or PK. That's how PK got every single one of their wins, was just dragging a game out as long as possible. I don't know. Hex Mambo didn't seem to me they wanted that game to end any earlier.
That's a good point. I mean, you remove any opportunity for comeback when the game is over. You can't make missed plays. The enemy team can't make amazing plays if the game ends. Doesn't matter, though. Hex Mambo build themselves up a 20,000-plus gold lead and take game number 1. Can they do the same and take a 2-0 in game 2? Stick around and find out. Convincingly take game number 1. There was rarely any pushback from the Niflheim Wargs in this game, at least after the opening minutes. There was a bit of a jungle back and forth in the first few minutes of this game, but ultimately Johnny and the rest of Hex Mambo able to take over. And it just felt like the Niflheim Wargs, for the first time this phase, didn't have answers for what were going on the map. And Miff, I think this has always been the threat of this Hex Mambo team that sometimes has not been realized throughout this phase. a team that had struggled for a little bit, maybe starting to find its footing now.
Yeah, I think so, man. And the Wargs, I think they could leave a lot of their issues in those late game team fights up to the composition.
Sure.
It was something that we had talked about briefly at the offset of that game. Who's burning beads if it's not Daji? Answer was nobody. Nobody was burning beads if it wasn't Sarpei. Kana was at no point tanky enough to initiate those fights. Angry for the most part. Was generally just relegated to using his ultimate for disengage. Spudio was not once looking for a proactive axe because they were so far behind at every single portion. The Niflheim Wargs, that is, I believe it was like 10,000 gold at 13 minutes, 20,000 gold by the time the game ended. But Hex Mambo, on the other hand, with a late game composition, one that I would argue would probably take a little bit of time to hit the ground running between Deathwalker, Johnny, Ekrom, not gods you consider for their early pressure, dominated every single portion in this game, including the early, from minute 1 to minute done.
Yep.
Hex Mambo were in control.
And again, we talked about how it was truly a clean game from Hex Mambo. When you're down the stretch here, 30+ minutes in, you're making 0 mistakes, but very cautious, potentially opening the door
Trepidatious.
to the Niflheim Wargs. I worded it to you. Throughout the mid to late game, that's a 99% win for Hex Mambo. But the longer the game goes on at 99 to 98%, you're still certainly going to win the game. But you play that game 100 times, there's some random thing that happens because the game has gone on longer. Point being, Hex Mambo won, but wanted to make sure they maximize their Fire Giant power plays in order to get it done. P's and B's for game number 2, kicking off right now. It's the Niflheim Wargs and Hex Mambo will head on to game 2. Flip spots here. Hex Mambo over in second pick. That'll put the Wargs over in first pick. I have to imagine, Miff, that the Wargs are going to have some type of answer to what was a double assassin comp last game. Even though it was a bruisery style of build for Deathwalker, Daji and Klidna, 2 of the highest priority picks in the SPL. You give both over to Hex Mambo, especially with the flexibility in the solo lane. Feels like something should pivot there, or at least have an answer to it in your own draft.
Yeah, I think the Wargs could go for the exact same style of composition that we just saw. It wasn't necessarily a conception issue. You've got a very standard comp with a large DPS, nuker mage in mid with pretty consistent CC lockdown. Do that again, but get one more guy on your team, just one more, that can consistently find AoE CC to set up for the Daji pools, or even the inverse, have Daji set up for this other person. Because what we saw from the Wargs was Sarpei would go in, the second he ticked over to level 5, hit a 2 or 3 man ultimate, everybody would beads it, and then they'd have to wait 2 more minutes because Sarpei would have to use his own beads on disengage. So if somebody else could just make use of those burnt relics, then the Wargs composition, I think, would have looked a lot better
you're right.
at every single portion. Starting your draft off with Khepri, that's consistent CC. The root from a range can burn beads on its own. Abduct obviously can do it, but more so having Scarab's Blessing as that defense tool. Just incredibly strong. Khepri, as plug-and-play as they come, as far as Guardian supports are concerned.
Strong look for Preds. Hex Mambo, I look at Trix Tank apparently has one of the best Sobecs in the world, because Sobek has panned out against this Hex Mambo team 70% of the time. Every once in a while it'll go through and it's a snap lock, it feels like, for Hex Mambo. And then also Kumbhakarna and the Chernobog for Ekrom both taken away. So the dual lane is going to have a totally different look for Hex Mambo here in game number 2. Cthulhu, I assume at least, to be over to the solo lane. That's something we've seen Deathwalker play a good bit. I think only Inbound is the one who goes to bat for Cthulhu support.
And he shouldn't.
So I would assume it's Deathwalker on Cthulhu solo here. And then Hachiman Myth. Could be a strong pick for Ekrom.
Yeah, Hachiman, I think, has just very quickly risen in the power rankings at the SPL and SCL level, or SCC level, rather. Just because he's got a great counter matchup in Uhl, who has been very popular recently. He's incredibly safe in lane. I don't think Hachiman's got any matchups that you say, wow, this is just awful, because you've got the CC immunity ultimate, standard dash, the ability to clear wave from a very significant distance, which means that he is one of the hardest hunters to zone. Generally, when ADCs pull a large lead, they'll try and freeze the lane. That's essentially just not an option against Hachi, because his auto attacks go so far with that first ability, because he's able to just move up, throw out that Heavenly Banner, and then immediately disengage, and all you have to do is tag those minions to get some credit for it. So I like what Hex Mambo has taken for themselves. Set, though, an interesting lock-in. It's one that Johnny has had a lot of success on in the past at the SPL and SCC level, but also does have some flex potential. So if it is something curious like Cthulhu in support, you could have set over towards the jungle. You can have set in mid. We've seen that in the past. Fafnir locked in means that Cthulhu is essentially slated for the solo lane, which means that the only flex potential this set now has is from mid and jungle.
Yeah, but Johnny has played this set at least once in the last 6 games, and it was a 9-3-6 win for Hex Mambo. Set has been played 3 times, at least once by Johnny, potentially more because, again, Johnny loves this pick. Hasn't lost yet here in the SEC, and so Hex Mambo playing with history on their side in what we assume to be their jungle pick. On the flip side, though, Kali keeps the jungle matchup interesting. Kali versus Set, always going to be fun to watch. But an Odin, you look at Odin Myth and the way that finalizes the draft here for the Niflheim Wargs, as well as the Ho Yi, and the way those 2 ultimates can play off one another, feels like potentially team fight changing, right? I mean, a cage is just so disruptive in a team fight.
It is, especially against picks like Cthulhu and Hachiman, neither of which have got any answer to that cage. We might see an early Phantom Shell pickup for Mambo, and I think they'd be right to do so, but Set, Fafnir, and Merlin won't be too concerned about this Odin pick. You've got decent ability now between the double auto attackers and additional attack speed that Fafnir and Hachiman affords their team to deal with those Odin cages. So Hex Mambo certainly has some answers, but maybe we'll be looking towards that shell a little bit earlier.
Well, Myth can Hex Mambo do it back-to-back. When the Niflheim Wargs push us on to a game number 3, let's go to game 2 to see just how this set will end up breaking down. Hex Mambo resurgent after a tough start to Phase 1 of the SEC, and the Niflheim Wargs hoping to keep their undefeated phase alive. 5 members of the Wargs looking for an out-of-place member of Hex Mambo. It looks like they'll come up empty-handed. There was a slight extension out from Trixtank, who drops the Vision Shard and heads on back to base. You know, I will say, Myth, I understand the wanting to slow down invades and how the invade meta was tough to watch and tough to play in. I do sometimes miss some of those unique early game plays, though. I mean, the full-on grouping, you slam someone before the minions spawn, you know, there's some fun in that.
Yeah, I was never a massive fan of invades because when invades are good, they're just the meta. I think there's got to be a sweet point, though, where it's like you can look for an invade, but it needs to be a heavy commitment, whereas last time invades were like in the meta, which is why Invader's Curse now exists. It was just like PBM locking in Hercules and walking at
right. Is that even an invade at that point, or is it just following the enemy jungler? You know,
it's just super annoying. Yeah,
like an invade is like I'm walking to your side of the map, and I'm gonna kill you and get out. Not I'm just following you for the first however many minutes of the game. Yeah, I can see how that would get annoying over a point of time, but a potential opportunity for creativity from the Wargs early in this game, but nobody from Hex Mambo caught overextended over towards the mid lane. As a Ho Yi and a Khepri lane, Myth, I think provides a lot of safety, but also some potential setup here. A route into what is now silenced out by Trixtank. Could have been a mark and a stun. There could be some burst damage here for the Wargs.
Yeah, there could be. I'm surprised that Trixtank has elected to go for Blink in the first slot. It's not often that Fafnir wants to, like, blink in, hammer somebody. Generally,
right, it's not Kumba.
Yeah, it's not Kumba. Like, if the combo is, like, I want Blink so I can set up my ult easily, you're still leaping in, dedicating the hammer, you're still finding the slow, and then you transform, you've got the second leap regardless. So it feels to me that Blink might just be a straight-up superfluous pickup on this god, but I'll keep my eyes on Trix. Maybe we see some pretty cool plays. There have been issues in the past where Fafnir can't steal objectives because hammer is so easy to block out. Well, maybe it's hard to predict a blink hammer, you know, and get to those gold furies.
Well, look, you've described, I will hold this thought, as Johnny under threat of falling for first blood. Able to teleport his way away. This is now suddenly a 3 versus 2 collapse. Sarpei and Angry desperately running, but escape is not an option for Sarpei. Kana does turn things around and make it a 1 versus 1 as Johnny was still low from the engage prior. But it's first blood over to Deathwalker, and the answer back for the other solo laner in Kana.
Yeah, Deathwalker getting that much closer to level 5, so important, as is trying to get a little bit of an extra gold onto this Cthulhu, that early laning phase. Not one of his strengths, so the quicker he can get out of the early phase towards that second or third item, the more important. So Hex Mambo, I think, coming out ahead there, especially considering it's junglers traded out. So regardless, Johnny does not fall that far behind, and slowing down a Kali always incredibly valuable. Just making sure that late game hyper carry has to be a little bit of a later game hyper carry.
Hex Mambo Myth. Now, I want to see what Johnny's gank and his rotation priority is over the next couple of minutes here of this game, because really it felt like there were a lot of jungle scraps happening in game one, but no just full on. Outside of, although literally first blood was a lane gank. But after that, felt like a lot of jungle scraps for both of these junglers, and we discussed some of the limitations of Daji and the beads being burnt, things like that for the Wargs. Really, both junglers, I hope, will look to get active early on here in this game. Maybe again relies on.
You're wrong to hope that. That's a set in a Kali.
Yeah. Okay, but you don't want to see him have some fun early on in the game?
No. I don't. I want to see clinical Smite play.
And clinical Smite play for those two is farming and not getting active until when?
It's actually a curious question, because I think
again,
Kali,
it's a hope thing. I'm not saying
Okay.
it's right, but I'm saying I hope.
Yeah.
I hope to see some pressure.
And hope is the mind killer. And here's the thing about Kali, Dave. I think she might actually hit the ground running a little bit quicker than Set, just by nature of this new style of build. And Sarpei not going towards that new build, instead has gone towards that age-old standard heavy mace in the second slot, so I'm just wrong.
Even if it's not jungle activity, I will take dual lane activity. And there is a small initiation from the Wargs, but it's immediately answered back by E-Chrome and Trixtank. Low is Preds. Trixtank has used his ultimate here in this fight. Of course, Preds won't have to unless he gets low enough. And a nice steal away from Spudio after Trixtank and E-Chrome deal the majority of the damage. Unfortunately, it feels like that's where this fighting will die off. Zero's snagged an assist in the earlier fight just a moment ago. It looks like Doom Orb is what he'll start off with on this Merlin. And I'll admit, Miff, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to get used to Doom Orb. With all the big nerf pass that we just saw, Doom Orb essentially escapes the eyes of the dev team. It still maintains a lot of that strength, has a massive infusion of power once you get over to that third tier item. And again, something I'll continue to say for the rest of my casting career, movement speed, one of the most valuable stat lines in the game, and Doom Orb gives you a bit of that. So I think Zero is going to benefit greatly from it. Will slow down his penetration slightly, will slow down his CDR, has to make a decision very shortly on which one he wants to prioritize first, whether or not it is going to be that cooldown or the ability to shred through some of these tankier targets on the Niflheim Wargs. I think he probably would prioritize cooldown, because we just have not seen too many rotations from Preds just yet. Kana sure gets involved earlier on, but I do not expect this Odin to be rotating all that consistently throughout the early portion. So we'll keep our eyes on Zero's build and which way he elects to go. Sarpei, though, has gone towards the age-old standard Crusher in the first slot, whereas Johnny, similarly an auto attacker, has decided to go for Jotuns instead.
Talked about how Deathwalker might get limited by this cage, but actually looks just fine as Kana and Sarpei jump onto Deathwalker, but sent into madness. Actually turns around a little bit more damage than Deathwalker himself took. Preds pinged out by Hex Mambo, able to dash away. I'll keep the Capri on the map for a little bit longer here. Deathwalker on Cthulhu is a very strong duo. I mean, you look at some of the more unique picks that Deathwalker has played. Cthulhu, arguably one of the more meta ones that we've seen here as of late. Always feels like there's an extra ounce or two of pressure when this pick ends up getting locked in. And maybe, Miff, the key to limiting it is what we just saw in the solo lane, but ideally more in a team fight. You drop a cage and you throw some CC and damage on top of it. Be careful, Angry. Trixtank whiffs the hammer, though, and so there will be no follow-up.
Yeah, I'd expected Sarpei to go for the same style of build that we saw from Johnny in the last game to deal with Deathwalker in particular. That early kin size will get you a ton of value, especially against a Cthulhu pick. You've got the lockdown from Kana, so the combo is simple. Have Niflheim Warg Soul Inner cage up this Cthulhu and pray that Sarpei's got enough DPS to finish him off inside the cage. But instead, Sarpei goes towards the Scream build, which is going to be Charged Bow in the second slot, then moving in towards that kin size. A lot of attack speed, but you're sacrificing a little bit of your own power. You're sacrificing a lot of movement speed. Your chase potential takes a massive hit. The Charge Bow build main strength is the fact that it can spread some damage throughout the entirety of a team fight, but I don't think we need that from Kali.
We will go again. A cage around Deathwalker, a root, and abduct. All of it there, and finally a kill falls onto Deathwalker. It just takes Preds and Sarpei and Kana throwing out everything they've got Luckily, there's a teleport there for Deathwalker, so in 15 seconds you can TP back to lane if necessary. Might not even be a lane there to teleport to. But that shows you the early pressure that is required to deal with this Cthulhu. With just an item and a half online, but enough physical defense, really slow down that kill.
Yeah, once Deathwalker finishes up this breastplate of Valor, he'll be double dipping on defense against a physical laner and jungler, so it'll make it a little bit more difficult for Sarpei to have that level of DPS, especially considering Sarpei is about to hit a power lull in the build, meaning that Deathwalker, if he was going to die, it had to be then. So the Niflheim Wargs correct to put their pressure there and finally do hit pay dirt, closing up a bit of that gold lead that Hex Mambo had established for themselves yet again. See it uptick in the chart. Yeah, that's Deathwalker's death. That said, Niflheim Wargs still pretty behind at this point, despite having a kill advantage. And Hex Mambo, something we saw from them in the last game is their incredible willingness to play around objectives. I would argue their objective play has gotten a lot stronger with this composition. Merlin, multiple auto attackers, and a Fafnir will do that.
Sarpei actually baits the transformation out of Trixtank. You'd love to now get some value out of this Fafnir ultimate, but it's anything but, as the Niflheim Wargs will send Kana towards mid. The later rotation in from Deathwalker. Does end up being a stun connecting from Trixtank. Immediately answered back, though, by Angry Johnny. Now, for the first time in a little while, can get active.
What?
Scarab's blessing onto Kana, and Zeros burns through the other target. And the other target is Preds, who ends up going down. Johnny sends a little bit more damage in to Kana, but Sarpei with the tick will shut down the jungler.
Hex Mambo putting some pressure into the tier 1 tower, has already dropped it low. Spadio rotates in aggressive, loses out on the majority of his HP bar, but Hex Mambo should end their aggression here. Trixtank, low HP, Deathwalker already on the way out. But it's the Niflheim Wargs who are killed first in that fight, and you gotta feel bad for Preds. My man got Omega trolled by Kana, who just walks up and absorbs that Scarab's blessing. Preds wanted that on him, make no mistake. That was a user error, a blunder, if you would, that cost the support his life.
Oh, and I would. It still feels like the Wargs the one driving the pressure in that fight, outside of a Scarab's blessing blunder. Would have been an even fight. Could have been worse, though. I mean, think about the moment where Johnny, I guess you could say overextends, but gets real close to killing off Kana.
He landed the auto.
Just had enough damage to turn around that kill, and could have made a very different look there at that fight. And you're right, Miff, it's a charged bow, not going to fully complete the OD bow into what should be a chin size after the fact. And so right now is maybe the Hex Mambo time to try to fight around Johnny, but Johnny just fell a moment ago. Feeling a little bit weaker in that build maybe as well. Gold Fury could be looked at here. The Hex Mambo are going to have to deal with timing their teleport here for Deathwalker, though the timing could work out, as Kana does not have teleport on the other side. But an Odin rotation, Miff, I think tells you all you need to know. And especially now with an engage on a Trixtank. Sarpei low. Sarpei will get the heal and the kill off on a Trixtank, and another individual pick for the Wargs puts Hex Mambo on the back foot.
But what can the Wargs do with this pressure? Trixtank dead for 20 seconds. Not much on the map can be done. Kana dedicates that ultimate to Deathwalker, but Deathwalker will not die if Sarpei isn't there.
Oh my goodness, Spadio will die because Preds is not there. There's no Scarab's blessing for the Hunter. There's no destruction for Sarpei either. Johnny, considering a chase down, won't follow up. Purple buff gets secured by the Wargs. Zero's in a very strong spot here as well, Miff, going Doom Orb into Soul Gem. So there's some early burst out of this Merlin. Hex Mambo are just relentless, and a little bit more pressure onto this mid-tier 1 tower would be a nice infusion of gold for Hex Mambo. Scarab's blessing out. Zeros, can you delay the timing? No, you can't. As Angry is pulled back into Pred. Sarpei back in the mid lane as well, but jumps out alive.
The blink in from Sarpei, only to lose 90% of his HP and immediately leap his way out. Massive engage to a loss for the Niflheim Wargs, who had started off that entire sequence by finding a pick on a Trixtank. I had asked, what is the answer? What are you going to do to push your lead? Nothing. Lose out on all your pressures. Exactly what the Niflheim Wargs do. Spadio falls down. Angry nearly dies, but loses his tower instead. Loses out on the beads. Heavenly Sprint lost by Preds, who has to use it to close gap and make sure Scarab's Blessing was able to be applied to Angry. So Relic lost to the Niflheim Wargs. Kill lost to the Niflheim Wargs. And the Hex Mambo, still from behind, are continually pushing this gold lead, making sure that it gets further and further in their favor without even having to look towards a neutral objective.
Right behind in kills, but pretty far ahead in gold as 2,000 is built up for Hex Mambo, and really experience is feeling good for Hex Mambo right now, hovering between 2.5 and 3,000 as solo lane, jungle, and ADC all have a lead, and it's 2 levels in ADC for eChrome. As itemization is pretty similar between the two. Early chin size for both ADCs. That'll help in shredding down some of the solo laners. But a missed stun. Imagine if we see eChrome get a little bit more aggressive, disengages, and Man at Archery Myth will help get him out of the fight.
It is just so hard to kill Hachiman, man. It's just so much movement speed, such a great disengage tool, and very easily able to work his way out of there. Yeah, that's a global emote, man.
That scared me.
Did you get scared, bud?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I thought I was descending to madness.
Can one of the stagehands get Dave his binky? He's struggling.
Nah, we're off that.
Were you off the binky?
You were off the binky.
Oh man,
took a while. You had to cold turkey it. Yeah, you toss it in the trash and you know.
In the trash?
Yeah, I cry. But yeah, well, you don't want to risk getting it back out. Right? You can't just hide it. You gotta totally toss it out. Abduct from Preds onto Trix tank. Watch out for Sarpé around the back though. Preds will be melted through, but there's a nice double stun on the back line from Sarpé. eChrome hands the heal over to the Kali. In the meantime, Scarab's Blessing is used onto Preds, but it's delayed out. Johnny still swinging away. Won't end up getting taken down. Deathwalker returns the kill. Kana goes back in, but the Cthulhu has got a double. Eyes for a triple as Zeros and the rest of Hex Mambo are going to run down the Wargs.
Stun's no good from Trix tank. Kana has got that leap available. A health shield coming back up very shortly as well. So Hex Mambo may have missed their opportunity to shut down the soul laner, but still, in trading eChrome for 2, very valuable for Hex Mambo. Again, eChrome goes into that fight without having the ultimate available to him, so the Niflheim Wargs, clearly targeting him in the engagement, were at least able to take him out, but not at no cost. It was at great cost, the entirety of their duo lane in trade. That said, still no neutral objective falling for either of these squads. If Zeros is just left alone with Gold Fury or Pyromancer, Merlin very adept at shutting those downs. We've seen what Johnny can do. It's a whole lot. Gotta think he can do a whole lot to these NPCs as well, but the Hex Mambo has not quite found the positioning, has not quite found the confidence to dig in their heels and look at the objective proper. Not that they need to, because the gold lead just continues to spiral out of control.
Yeah, I wonder if we'd see an immediate pull, but I guess we shouldn't be super surprised given the cautious nature.
The propensity for caution.
The propensity for caution, Miff. You're always on point with the verbiage that Hex Mambo displayed in game number 1. The Pyro and a Gold Fury, though. If you're the Wargs, maybe you're in territory of splitting the objectives. You're not feeling super confident going up against Hex Mambo in a team fight around the Fury. Could always head on over towards the Pyro. But with again, the way that both of these teams have played the game, might just see another 5v5, a couple of kills, and then no pull on the objective after the fact. But I was wondering if some of the cautiousness for Hex Mambo in game 1 was because of the final judgment, and surely it was, stealing away objectives, taking them away when Hex Mambo had done most of it. Doesn't quite remain, I suppose. Fighting in Spudio's ultimate is like steal potential, but
it's like ticks for 100.
I guess I'm grasping at straws here. But Hex Mambo, it feels like got a lot of burn between Zeros and eChrome and the chin size, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a force fight here at some point, especially with Deathwalker hovering over on the left.
Yeah, anytime the soul laner makes a rotation, you got to think that they are out there for a reason. It is so hard to drag these guys out of their cave called the short lane. That said, Johnny, over on the right-hand side of the map, does not inspire confidence in me that Hex Mambo is going to look towards the Gold Fury
back
itself.
Reset, 5v5,
back reset, yeah, okay.
Gold Fury fight.
I think so. You might be right.
And that doesn't happen often. So I really hope this is one of those times. I'm going to call my mom and let her know I was right today at work if we do end up seeing a 5v5 and a Fury pull here in just a moment. Though with both ADCs kind of trading out some damage with one another, neither worse for wear. You got fully stacked Devourer's Gauntlet. Was thinking there could be some pressure one way or another. Unfortunately, looks like I'm wrong. As Johnny heads back over towards the right side of the map, wants to clear the wave off the solo lane tower.
You scared me, man.
I scared you that time?
I was relaxing.
How can you when
when that's happening?
when that pops up on the screen? It freaked me out a second time.
Well, surely not a third.
No. Well, comedy's in 3, so one more time it's going to happen as long as it pops up on the screen. But TBD on when exactly it happens. You got to look at the pacing of this game, though. Yes, Hex Mambo are ahead. The goal lead is stabilized around 2,500.
Which is just about nothing at 18 minutes.
But are they happy with if you look at late game compositions?
Uh-huh.
I mean, you got a Kali on one side. You know, Ho Yi's going to feel good, as all ADCs do later in the game. But then you have a Cthulhu. Are you feeling like Hex Mambo are just fine with the way the gold lead looks at this point in the game?
I think so. Generally, you would be concerned because Kali is going to hit an inflection point very shortly where her power level just goes way up. But Sarpei's attentions are going to be diverted to 2 specific targets. You need Sarpei to shut down Deathwalker, but do you also want Sarpei to not be chasing out Zeros, who's gone undying so far?
Right.
So 2 key targets, and there's only one Sarpei.
Hex Mambo have the burn, but they're also looking for a team fight. One of the big ultimates committed. That's Descent into Madness. But Deathwalker left backpedaling. Trixtank luckily holds on to his ultimate. Decent-sized team fight ultimate now gone from Hex Mambo. Cthulhu still strong, still scary without that Descent into Madness. But you'd love to have it for a team fight. Blink into the back line as Kana has caged in E-Chrome, but has not done enough. Double knock-up on the back. Has left Hex Mambo a bit reeling, but now they've regathered their feet and start to charge forward again towards the Niflheim Wargs. Kana eats a stun and ends up leaping out of the route. Now Hex Mambo the ones considering pulling the Gold Fury.
A nearly full-channeled cage caught out E-Chrome, who does not have to use just about anything outside the relics. And he just walks out and fully resets himself. There was not a large commitment from the Wargs to try and follow up on that cage, although Kana finds that priority target. Nobody there to make it a priority.
Should be something onto Spuddy. Again, another ultimate, though, committed. Trixtank transforms into the dragon. Damage down from Spuddy. Oh, no, it's only 100 or so a Tickmiff. That's not a lot of damage. Deathwalker turns around the kill. Sarpei does, though, as well. Destruction ticking in the back. Sarpei hoping for a kill onto Zeros, but it won't be there. A 2-for-1 swing now for Hex Mambo, and there's no cautiousness this time, no propensity for caution. Hex Mambo will pull the Gold Fury, angry, close by, and Hex Mambo confirm the objective.
Not often you'll see Zeros jump on a hand grenade, but he does so there just to make sure that Gold Fury is not stolen away by the Primordial Onslaught. And you know what, man? It wasn't the Ho Yi ultimate that did the damage. It was like the 3 auto attacks inside the ultimate that were like worth 6 procs, but whatever. Spuddio puts out a whole lot, but he puts it in the wrong target. Trixtank may have fallen, but
no shot that's
Hex
only
Mambo,
100 damage per tick.
It's probably like 160.
Doug, can you
Well, you got to talk about the defense. I'm not going to do the math on it, but like it's not a whole lot at this point. Yeah, like at max rank,
you're right.
It's like 120, but like he's got
every
power
half a
scaling
second for 4.5 seconds. So what is that? That's 10, 9.
It's like 9. I think.
Ticks. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. It's not a whole lot. It's more so about the slow, and it's about the separation of the team fight. It's a lot if you hit all of it. It's about on par for every other ultimate in the game. What was I was making like an actual point before you dragged me down here.
No chance you were making a real
me?
point.
Surely not.
You're saying his auto attacks were the ones really doing the damage.
And they were, especially with this build against that target. But deja vu to the last team fight, that's where I was going, where it was a 1-for-2 trade favoring Hex Mambo. Last time around, it was E-Chrome who lost his life. This time it's Trixtank, and Trixtank should be the one dying. That's the support. That's the Blink Fafnir. Yeah, you'd prefer that he fall down than your ADC, and that's why we see the objective go over to Hex Mambo so quickly, as does the gold lead, as does the experience, but experience and gold meaning less and less as the clock clicks onward. I think we will see very shortly Hex Mambo try and group up, at least look towards the Pyromancer, try and take the team fight instead, though. If the fight starts on Pyro, it's going to end deep in the enemy jungle.
E-Chrome has just been more effective in connecting with damage. Look at the damage charts, 4,000 almost exactly over what Spuddio has been able to provide. Whereas Angry, a bit ahead in the mid lane department at 0-0-5. The Tiamat has absolutely reached a power point here in this game. Spuddio is not on this side of the map for this fight. If Hex Mambo can force something here, there's an ADC missing with, while not massive damage, a good team fighting ultimate now off the map. Hex Mambo answer the ADC being on left to pulling the Pyromancer, and a transformation out from Trixtank might signal an immediate Fire Giant pull, and it is. Spuddio looks happy just to keep pushing down the left side of the map as Deathwalker walks towards the Niflheim Wargs, who back away from the Fire Giant pit, but Hex Mambo have done the same. Kana has gone in. You're taking a 4v5 now if you're the Niflheim Wargs, and Hex Mambo are disengaging from this fight. Spudio has gotten a free Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower on left, and Hex Mambo have a Pyromancer to show for it.
Yeah, Johnny rotates over just to make sure that Phoenix doesn't go down, does not get there in time to defend the Tier 2 tower. Hex Mambo, they pick up Pyro. That's a win over to the Niflheim Wargs. Deathwalker loses ultimate, as does Trix Tank, so now the Wargs don't need to concern themselves with an immediate Fire Giant pool for about a minute until those cooldowns are back and available. The Niflheim Wargs, and specifically Spudio, I think, make the right decision to split the map and get themselves a little bit more global gold as a team, closing up that lead. What was 6,000, now down to around 4. Still favoring Hex Mambo nonetheless.
Whoa, E-Chrome gallops in towards Kana, who has already used his leap. Deathwalker's got some good damage. Cage down, should save the life of Kana. But if you talk about juggling the team fight ultimates, as Deathwalkers and Trix Tanks are going to be coming back up, Kana's now is down, and the Cage has been so important in finding any sort of pressure for the Wargs. Kana will have to teleport back to the right side of the map, but it's going to be fighting without maybe the most important part of Odin's kit.
Yeah, Kana as well does not have nearly as much CDR, so it's going to be a lot sooner that Deathwalker's ultimate comes back up, and it's going to be a little while on Kana's. Now down to halfway, Deathwalker has his available, so this could be an opportunity for Hex Mambo to take the engagement as Angry tries his best to find the invisible target. Nobody there. Primordial Onslaught connects with nobody. Hex Mambo now stepping forward, forcing back the Wargs.
Angry won't take the hammer. Kana is 3/4 of the way back to the Cage. There's always going to be a small window for Hex Mambo. Like right now, if Deathwalker, not right now anymore, but a moment ago, if Deathwalker and Trix Tank had both transformed, that would have been an advantage, but either a bit slow on the draw or not exactly thrilled with the team fights that presented themselves. Hex Mambo will not look for the initiation. Johnny goes over towards mid, pushing that wave. That'll force Sarpé to hover back towards mid as well. Sarpé has found effectiveness in these fights. It's been a good set for Kali lovers, as Johnny has a great game number 1. And Sarpé has had a good start to game number 2 here, impacting all 6 of the kills. Hex Mambo do nothing but threaten the Fire Giant, though Preds around the back could keep things interesting. A root misses. Trix Tank uses the jump, desperately trying to run away. It's the root down, though, onto the front line of Hex Mambo. The Cage has caught out onto everyone, but the Phantom Shell is able to disengage here for Hex Mambo, and look at the damage. It's all connecting onto the Wargs. And the Scarab's Blessing will do nothing. Hex Mambo snag 3 kills. Angry and Spudio left running, but E-Chrome has got a double kill. And suddenly, Mifflin, without an FG, this game could be in question.
The Niflheim Wargs say, hey, we can't just let this tower go down for free. We need to get something chased much too far into Hex Mambo's side of the map. Forget how behind the Wargs were. And now it's Mambo, 5 strong, and I mean it, strong. It's only Trix Tank who's taken any damage. Move into the Titan.
Hex Mambo, they are not going to play this one cautiously. They will walk into the Titan room. The Niflheim Wargs have not lost a set all phase long. And Hex Mambo on the verge of knocking them down. The Titan melting through. Zeros has got the damage, but so do Johnny and Trix Tank. Preds in on the respawn, but Hex Mambo get it done in 26 minutes, and they will take the 2-0.
Hex Mambo, they chose the right time to start hitting their stride as we get closer and closer to these lands. This is the time to start peaking as a team, and they've done so properly. The Wargs, though, I think, have still earned our respect. What is...
They're peaking as a team.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead. The Wargs have earned our respect.
Yeah, our Wargs have earned our respect. Yeah, good for break.
Well, Mifflin doesn't get to throw it, but I do. It's a 2-0 to Hex Mambo over the Niflheim Wargs, who are peaking as a team at the right time.
That's not the right kind of peak, man.
It counts. We'll send it to break, and Mifflin and I will debate.
stick with me, maybe. I love you so. Anything more than this, it would be to push my luck. I guess it's in my nature to give up, I don't give up. It's not an ordinary fever. There is a kind that never ends. I was scared to hold on. You had already let go. I went too long to let it happen, baby. Sometimes you just need a friend. I was but a lonely feeling, maybe. In time you will understand. I was not what you wanted, but you were drifting someday. I kept your motor running, and no one saw it coming. Oh, peace and heartache. Peace and heartache.
Hex Mambo with one of the most convincing sets we've seen in the EU SEC so far this phase. Take the 2-0 win over the previously unbeaten Niflheim Wargs, who put together a fantastic phase themselves, losing only on the last game of the year. Nothing to be sad
the
about
year?
for the Niflheim Wargs. Yeah, right. I assume it's not the end of the year.
I hope not.
For the Niflheim Wargs, but a good look for Hex Mambo and a successful phase nonetheless for Niflheim Wargs.
I think so. Hex Mambo proving that they were dominant in previous seasons for a reason, or pieces of these teams. Individual players have been dominant in the past, and, well, maybe those early season struggles were just that, just small early struggles, because now once the ship has been righted, well, Hex Mambo looks like a team that you cannot reckon with. These guys are very strong at every single portion of the game. The only weakness I saw was their unwillingness to end games early, but clearly now, with a little bit more data on this set, very willing to end games when given the opportunity.
Yeah, here's your end game fight, and literally end game fight in 25 minutes here for Hex Mambo. The Scarab's Blessing bought a little bit of time, but just the collapse inward just did way too much. Echrome really surprised me here in this game. Look at the damage charts at the end of it, 22,000 with 16,000 being the next closest amount of damage here in this game. I asked if Hachiman was going to end up being a good pick, and it was. And it wasn't even anything flashy about what Echrome does, right? I mean, it's just a well-rounded ADC, and Echrome played it just so effectively. I think Zeros with a slightly more unique build, or at least ordering of items maybe, on the Merlin really put out some good damage numbers. And peaking jokes aside, I think Hex Mambo are playing. What is that, man?
Was what?
What are you doing there? You. That's not right. That's not the right kind of peak. That's not the right kind of peak.
Well, then what do you want? What do you want? How do I do it?
No, I'm saying they're peaking at the right time. They're playing their best smite at the right time. I don't know what you're doing with your hands.
He's peeking.
Right.
At the right time.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't make much sense to me, Miff. I've never seen that before in my life.
Okay.
One set of EU Smite down for the day. Remember, we have a triple header of EU SEC today, and then the North American SEC will be a triple header tomorrow. Highland Ravens versus Gilded Gladiators, our next matchup. And then to end the phase in the EU SEC, Styx Ferryman going up against the Aru Scorpions. Aru Scorpions, at this point, fighting for a little bit of pride. Hope to escape the phase with a more successful look.
With a success.
With
a singular success.
You're right, with a singular success. And a matchup against the Styx Ferrymen, who have had a singular success. And so Highland Ravens and Gilded Gladiators, the weight still potentially on that matchup. If the Gilded Gladiators win, they confirm themselves 100% towards Masters. Could still be an opportunity Again, don't know the plus minuses, the heads-to-heads, all of that off the top of my head. But if Styx Ferrymen win and Gilded Gladiators lose,
Maybe some
could
parity
be some
there.
movement between 4 and 5, which is the important inflection point. But 3 teams confirmed going on to Masters here from the EUSEC. And I think Miff, despite a loss here, despite it being a 2-0, I don't think the Niflheim Wargs are sounding the alarm bells just yet. It was a pretty convincing game 2, pretty convincing game 1 for that matter, but still a very capable team.
Yeah, I think so. And teams are obviously going to have good days and bad days. I would argue that we didn't get to see the peak of the Wargs here, the peak of them, because we know what they're capable of. We know that they are a team that likes to get involved early, and I don't think they were given that opportunity even a single time in this set.
No.
Just Hex Mambo, they came out to play, and, well, they did.
Hex Mambo get a 2-0 in our first set of the day. Our second set of the day, the Ravens up against the Gladiators. Coming up next. Stick around.